Hey guys, Brent Allen here of ThePewterCast. Now, what you guys are about to listen to, while yes, technically is an episode of ThePewterCast, it's also an episode of a lot of other Buccaneer podcasts. We brought all these guys together. We had stuff going out live through Mixler. We had stuff going out live on YouTube. And as can sometimes happen with a live show, we had some issues with one of our mics, and there was a little bit of popping and stuff. We did eventually figure it out, but unfortunately, due to the live nature of how we were recording the show, we are unable to edit that out. So just letting you know that you're going to hear that through the first bit of the show, but don't worry, it does eventually work itself out, and we got it figured out. We got it sealed up for the rest of the show. But guys, this is a fantastic show. I can't wait for you guys to get to listen to it. This is the post-draft wrap-up mega show featuring the PewterCast, the Locks on Bucs podcast, the Cannon Fire podcast, and Buc What Ya Heard. Welcome, everybody, to the Buccaneers post-draft wrap-up mega ultra super show. My name is Brent Allen. I will be your host tonight, but normally this is where I say this is the PewterCast, but this is not necessarily the PewterCast. It is, but it isn't. This is a mega show. What we have done, guys, is we have brought together some of the best Bucs fan podcasts that we have out there. So represented on the show tonight, I've got my co-host with the PewterCast, Ren Dax. Ren, how's it going out there, buddy?
Never better. You know, we wait and we wait and we wait and we wait, and halfway through day 3, we're like, man, this is really long. I'm kind of ready for this to be over.
That's why we needed a parrot.
And it was fun. It was good times.
Yeah, and with us as well, broadcasting live on his YouTube channel, Buc What Ya Heard, super heavyweight Gene. What's going on, buddy?
Hey, I am glad to be here. I'm excited. This is just like, the day after Christmas, and I'm really happy with everything that's happening right now. So I'm excited to talk about it with you guys. I appreciate every last one of your shows. You guys get me through the week. I just want you guys to all know that when I put my headphones on and I'm listening to your shows, you guys get me through. So I appreciate you.
Awesome. Joining us also is the guys from the Locked On Bucs podcast, formerly the Walking the Plank podcast, but still from thepewterplank.com. James Yarko, David Harrison. What's going on, gentlemen?
Hi. I'm so glad draft weekend is over.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun too. So
yeah,
glad to be doing this with you guys.
Yeah. Well, now we make the turn towards knowing what the roster is going to look like, at least heading into camp, and we play that waiting game of phase 4 of OTAs and different things like that. And with that, Evan Wanish, Mr. Bucs football himself, representing the Cannon Fire podcast, bringing up the young guard over there, but. Listen, about 17,000 of you guys follow him out there on Instagram. Evan, what's going on, buddy?
Nothing much, man. I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me, and can't wait for a great show.
Yeah, should be lots of fun. We are, just so everybody knows, we are broadcasting live on 2 places right now. I mentioned earlier we're out on YouTube, so for those of you who are there in the chat room, Gene, I can't see if there's the chat going on over there, but those guys can look at all of our beautiful, smiling, shiny faces, except for James, because this beard is covering everything, and it's all just blending into his black shirt. But you guys have us there. And then on our Instant Cast platform that Ren and I do over at the PewterCast, we are broadcasting live there. So I want to say shout out. The chat room over there is filling up. So you guys have a blast. I'll try to check in with you there and the chat room. But guys, tonight we're talking about the draft. The draft not coming, but that is gone. And, David said it just a second ago. James said it, and I echo, man. I love that the draft happened, and I'm glad to be on this side of it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much, and I know, Brent, you're a huge fan of the mock drafts, but there's just so much speculation. And then there's the picks, and then there's the crying when nobody got who they wanted. And then there's the it's just such a headache. David and I, we recorded our podcast earlier today, and it's like my brain doesn't work anymore. It's like a fried egg. It's just information overload and hot take overload to finally be away from it, I'm excited just to see the roster shape moving forward.
Yeah, it should be. It certainly should be. So we'll talk about all that kind of stuff, guys, as we go through it. So I think what we'll do, guys, is we're kind of wrapping up the draft. So we'll just sort of walk through the draft as it pertains to the Bucs, and we'll go through that. So first thing, guys, obviously round one. Here's what I want to know. I want to know where everybody was for the draft. Red and I, we were at Raymond James Stadium for the official Buccaneers draft party. So we got to kind of experience that one, at least on round one. But Gene, all the way out there in Arizona or something, aren't you?
Yeah. Went to a Bucaholics draft party, and they got loud. And let me tell you,
Nice.
the place where we were at, they want us to come back. They said they liked the energy, and they didn't realize that Bucs fans traveled as far as they do. But again, shout out to the Bucaholics. They show up and show out every time.
So you were out there at the Bucaholics, so shout out to you guys. This is where I would normally play California Love, but I don't have it on deck. Evan, where were you watching the draft, buddy?
Well, I don't know if some of you know this or not, but I do not live in Florida. I live in Pennsylvania, so I was just watching it at my house. I watched it. I had a little notepad and stuff with some notes on the draft, and I had a draft book with me, and I just enjoyed watching it from there. So, I mean, it's nothing like I would much rather be at a Bucs draft party, but I mean, I'm perfectly happy with booing a commissioner from my couch.
There you go. And James, David, I know you guys are up there still in the frozen tundra. So where were you guys just couching it, or what have you guys been doing for the draft?
Yeah, I just watched it at home. The kids watched a lot of the first round with me. So, I mean, I was just, watching on my living room TV and messing around on Twitter and then writing as fast as my poor little fingers could type.
Yeah, what you see now is where I was sitting during the entirety of the entire NFL draft here in my home office, getting the picks out as fast as possible as they were coming across in the tropical Fort Drum, New York, Canadian area.
Yeah, I guess you have to. That when you run a website, you got to stay on top of it like that. So, all right, guys. Well, let's jump right into it. Let's jump into the draft now. Going into the draft, we had pick number 7. And there was all kinds of speculation about what was going to happen. Derwin James was a guy that a lot of people were picking because there was the big 3, obviously. And we were like, they might fall to us, they might not. There should be 4 quarterbacks to go. But lo and behold, only 2 quarterbacks were taken. The big 3 were gone. And we came up on a trade. So, Ren, man, I'm going to toss this one over to you. I kind of know because I was sitting right next to you, but how'd you feel about the trade? The Buccaneers traded down to number 12 and picked up 2 late second-round picks.
Yeah, I think everyone was happy with that. At first, I'm sure everyone, when saw us traded to Buffalo, everyone was thinking, "Hey, we can get the first 2 first-round draft picks and maybe a second, but probably a third." But the Bills sort of had us over a little bit of a barrel. We were at 7. We weren't going to take a quarterback, and whoever we were targeting at 7 were going to be the same, group of guys that we were targeting at 12. So they were adamant about hanging on to that pick. But I guess sort of answer your question, I was really happy about it. We had Gene on and we had James on for our, just pre-draft, right before draft, and like, what do you want to see?
Yeah.
And it was really scary that, the Bucs sort of they made it very well known that they were going BPA, best player available at, wherever they were at 7 or ended up being 12. But then we had 2 big holes at cornerback and running back, but we only had 1 pick until the 4th round. But Jason Light, made it happen and turned 2 picks in the first round into 5 picks in the first round.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I find that to be something quite amazing, that when you can take 1 pick and ultimately turn it into 4 picks, that's a good day. That's a real good day.
Did I say first round? I meant first 3 rounds.
Yeah. Evan, what about you, buddy?
I mean, I think this was probably the best scenario for the Bucs, assuming the big 3, Bradley Chubb, Quentin Nelson, and Saquon Barkley, were all gone. If any one of those three were there, I don't know if the Bucs do that deal, because I think that the Bucs really like each one of those guys. But I mean, if the big three were gone, I think we all can agree that the best case scenario for the Bucs was to trade down and acquire more picks, because they had too many needs just to, go with their first, with a second, without the third, and then with their fourth. So just like you guys said, I mean, to go from having 2 picks in the top 100 to having 5 picks in the top 100 was a very, very good move. And I think the Bucs were able to fill a lot of their needs with those picks. So it was a very good trade. I know some fans out there wanted the 2 first-round picks. I'm sure a lot of teams in front of the Bucs even did, and the Bills weren't willing to do that. So I think that what the Bucs got, I think, is a very good deal. And I think that, I think most of the pulse that I got from a lot of Bucs fans were they were happy with the trade.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you guys on that. Gene, what about it, buddy?
You know what? I was ecstatic with the move. The guys that the Bucs were looking at, Bradley Chubb, Quentin Nelson, 2 trench guys, that I think that's where the direction they were trying to go. For them to be able to trade back and end up with making 3 second-round or getting 3 second-round picks at that time was a great move. I liked it, and they still got the guy that they wanted. I am so excited about Vita Vea. I personally, on paper, what he's done in college. I put out a link in my chat over here where you can kind of go look at some of his game film over the past couple of years just to see. I know we don't have all 22 for college, but this will kind of give you an idea of just, what this guy can do. I'm excited. He does nothing but bolster that defensive line, which, I felt like Jason Licht did a great job addressing in free agency. The one thing I will say that people need to keep in mind is Bo Allen was a rotational player. He wasn't a starter. What this does is allows him to continue playing at a high level without having to be that starter. So I like the move. I like how you can, interchange a lot of these defensive tackles, and I thought it was a good move.
Yeah, I liked it too. James, David, I'll let you guys jump in.
You're muted.
Uh-oh. Am I? Oh, hey. Muted.
Okay,
I'm muted. Still. Awesome. Hey.
There we go. Record button all over it.
I know, it really is.
Yeah, man.
So that's why you don't touch those buttons, but sometimes you need to.
That's a thing. That's a thing. It's a real thing, guys. I think, haven't you done it once before, James?
No, we had in the early days of Walking the Plank, we interviewed Mark Cook. It was like a second or third show, and I recorded it through the app on my phone that I had always used before that. And for whatever reason, it only recorded my voice. It didn't record David or Mark Cook. So yeah, that was the only filter. I hit record. It just didn't record everybody.
All right, just checking.
That was our James Yargo episode.
Because this is relevant to the current conversation. I had one where we had Scott Reynolds on one night, and everything was working fine, but we were in the middle of the conversation, and the card for recording got filled and just shut off on me. Didn't know it so the whole conversation was lost. Anyway, back to this, guys. Yeah. Talking about Vita Vea. James, David, I'll throw that one over to you guys. What'd you think about the pick with Vita Vea? Because Jordan James was still there. That's what a lot of people were thinking we were going to go with. How do you feel about it?
David, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, so Vita Vea, I mean, in a nutshell, it's I'm happy with him. I think anytime you make your trenches stronger, anytime you make your defensive line better, it's just a plus. I wouldn't have been as happy with him at number 7 as I was with him where the Bucs were able to grab him and get the trade down and do all that. And I feel like as far as the trade is concerned, I feel like I was one of the ones who I wanted 2 first-round picks. Obviously, I think everybody would prefer 2 first-round picks. I think if there was 1 quarterback left on the board out of the 4, then maybe the Bills would have given up that second first-round pick. But I think because there were still 2 options and still some potential teams that would trade out, behind the Buccaneers, it was kind of a best option. And obviously, it worked out well. But for Vita Vea, I mean, I don't know. I can't find much of a way to complain because he's pretty much going to come in, I think, fill the role that everybody kind of expected Chris Baker to fill for the most part. However, as a rookie, the expectations aren't going to be as high, and a lot of fan reactions based off of expectation. There's still going to be high expectations as a first-round draft pick, but I mean, we saw with Vernon Hargreaves in his first year. For the most part, despite his rookie struggles, a lot of people are like, he's a rookie, give him some time. It wasn't until his second season that people really started kind of holding his feet to the fire. So getting Vita Vea in there with the other defensive veterans they have on that line now is just going to make his assimilation in the NFL that much easier. And I'm looking forward to see what he can do with those guys.
Yeah, let me ask you guys this, because I had this as a thought, that by drafting Vita Vea, we did two things. One of them was essentially we injury-proofed our defensive line.
Yeah.
Does that does that make sense? Because we now have two complete defensive lines. We have you think of the first one, you've got JPP, Gerald McCoy. I'm going to say Bo Allen starts over Vita Vea just to start with, but I could be wrong.
I can see that.
And then you've got who you got on the other side, the other end, Will Golston. Let's say it's Vinny Curry. Thank you, Vinny Curry. So that's your first four. But then your second line, you got Noah Spence. You get who you got? You got Mitch Unrein. You got Vita Vea. And Will Golston. I mean, that's two complete. Are they starting caliber lines? They might be, but I mean, and then we still have Yad and Will Clark, but seeing like a Ryan Russell, a Silver Slinga, like those guys, I just don't think is going to happen anymore, So it's what do you guys think? Is that a fair assessment? A lot of people kind of bagging on the Vita Vea thing, but to me, I mean, my God, that defensive line is going to be bulletproof this year.
Yeah, well, and it was something that I've said a few times. The thing about drafting Vita Vea, and I know a lot of people were upset that it wasn't Derwin James, but of course the majority of those people were the FSU fans. I won't say all of them, but the majority of FSU fans were upset at Vea over Derwin James. But this is the same group of fans that have been screaming and complaining for the last 5, 6, 7, 10 years now that there hasn't been any help along the defensive line. The defensive line's been useless. Sapp and Rice left. Gerald McCoy can't get any help. Every time they try to get Gerald McCoy help, he fails. Michael Johnson was a bust. Chris Baker's a lazy slob. Now Jason Light has taken that weakness and that position that he's ignored. I mean, Vita Vea is the first defensive lineman this team has drafted in the first round of the draft since Gerald McCoy. It's been largely ignored. So you short up that position, and by default, by keeping these guys fresh and keeping that rotation that you're talking about, Brent, that even if one guy goes down, there's that next man up mentality, but there's not a huge drop off in talent. I'm not going to say that if JPP goes down and Noah Spence has to fill the role that the talent's the same, because that's not true. But there's not a massive drop off the way that there has been in years past. So keeping these guys fresh, keeping the pass rush heavy, getting after Matt Ryan and Drew Brees and Cam Newton and those guys, it's going to help the back end already. And then they address the back end to fill the depth and fill those holes. It all has to be, I've said it, Brent, I heard you say it. Yeah. It's all a cohesive unit. It's like a symphony. All the different parts have to work together. And so they addressed the front lines. You build from the front to the back. Mark Dominic tried to build from the back to the front, and it failed miserably. It set this team back 10 years.
Yeah, it's absolutely. And we're definitely going to get to some of those other back end pieces because those were huge, You had Vita Vea should be. Have you guys watched his tape though? Before I move on from him,
yes.
I mean,
yes. This
guy is what you got.
This guy is amazing. I mean, just watching him handle double teams sometimes is a work of art, and he uses so much power. And I think if Brinston Buckner can help him with footwork and help him with finesse moves, there's an article that Steve White wrote for SB Nation. I put the link out and I've tweeted it out. Anybody that has a problem with this pick should really read that article and just look at the breakdown that he did on Vita Vea. It just, I went back and looked at some of the double teams that he made mention of, and it's just incredible what this guy is capable of doing. And you couple that with Buckner being the defensive line coach, I think this can really put him on another level. His ceiling is high.
Ooh, I tell you, I watched.
go
ahead, David.
I was just going to say, so for the Peter Plank, I did Vita Vea's profile for our site, and I'll tell you, and I know I'm in the minority here, but honestly, when I watched his tape the first time, by tape, of course, I mean YouTube, I don't want to say I was underwhelmed, right? But it's kind of what led me to my opinion of that 7. I really wasn't comfortable with him, but in a trade back scenario, I was, and the reason is, and it's all got to be put in perspective, obviously, because we don't know what Washington is telling them to do. We don't know what their defensive line, their coach there is telling them to do. And we all know that on any given play, especially as a defensive lineman, your job may not be to get to the quarterback. Your job may not be to get into the backfield. Your job may be, especially as a big guy, the team's going to double team anyway, to just swallow blocks and open up things for your teammates. And that's good. What I saw too many times, though, from me to be comfortable with as a top 10 pick was first and second down, especially like first down, second down and 8, second down and 10, second down and 12. He wasn't making the plays that you would expect out of a top 10 defensive lineman all the time. And when he really kicked in was third and long, where you can pin your ears back and really get after it, or in big moment situations. So like red zone situations or late game, close game situations. And don't get me wrong, that definitely showcases his talent level and his ability. But it opened up a little bit of concern for me when you're investing a top 10 pick, and perhaps he's not coming out every play. But again, looking at Washington's defense, if he's expected to be out there for 90% of the snaps, 80% of the snaps, it's going to be necessary for him to kind of take a play here and there. I don't say off, but kind of reserve the gas tank a little bit.
Right.
And I think going back to your point about the 2 defensive lines, that's something he's not going to have to worry about in Tampa, because he can give 100% every snap he's on the field. And when he needs to tap that helmet, you got Bo Allen, you got Mitch Unrein, you got somebody else that can come in there, give him a breather so he can go gas up and come back in. So that's just from what I saw. I know it was a little bit different than what everybody said, so I just want to kind of throw that out there.
Yeah, Evan. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Ren.
I've heard that. No, I just wanted to sort of tip my hat to Dave, because I've heard that. I heard it from you first, so I started doing some digging, and I heard, read and heard sort of the same things. And you don't want to exactly say he takes plays off, but my question was he a 90%, 95% D lineman in Washington? And like to your point, he's not going to have to do that in Tampa. But I just want to sort of get a better feeling about this. Was he like on the field at all times over there when he played in Washington?
He wasn't on the field all the time. He definitely was on the field the majority of the time. The game I really focused in on was UCLA, because Josh Rosen's on the field, and this is kind of his opportunity to come as a defensive lineman and really showcase his things, because everybody's watching that game that's not a Huskies fan is watching that game for Josh Rosen. You know what I mean? But this was an opportunity for him to come out there and really show kind of what he had, and he definitely got after Rosen in that game. I'll give him that. But again, just first and second down, he wasn't always there. He wasn't always firing on all cylinders. There were a couple situations where I kind of feel like the Washington defense, the coaches probably like, okay, we can kind of manage this. So they took him off the play for off the field for a couple plays, and then brought him in on that 3rd and 8, 3rd and 10, and he definitely did perform in those situations. So I don't want to downplay him. Just kind of the observation I saw, but I don't know the exact stat, Ren, but I would probably, just from the work that I did see, the 3 games I watched on him, I would estimate probably a 75 to 80% snap guy.
Okay.
Well, guys, for time's sake, I want to go ahead and jump into the second round. But Evan, I think you were wanting to say something a minute ago. Did you have something you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, and it's really I hear a lot of people talk about Vita Vea, and they say, he's just Danny Shelton. First off, because one, he went to Washington, he plays defensive tackle, and they're pretty much like they're them like Hawaiian guys, And I just think that anybody who says that, I just think is wrong. Danny Shelton, if you look at the tape, Vita Vea's athletic ability is so much more than Danny Shelton. Danny Shelton was a bust because he never developed any sort of pass rush ability ever. He was just like a big guy that filled gaps in the D line. Vita Vea has a lot of athletic ability, and is he the best pass rusher? No, he didn't exactly get a ton of sacks at Washington, but I still think there is a lot of room for a Vita Vea and potential for him to become a 5-sack guy, maybe even a 6-sack guy. He could do that year to year, and it wouldn't be any surprise to me. So Vita Vea is not Danny Shelton. That's basically what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that's a great comment. I'm sorry, Brian, I know you want to move on, but that's a great comment right there. Danny Shelton was not brought in to be a break the line kind of guy. He's the guy who pushes the pocket, right? What Vita Vea is going to do is he's going to break the pocket. He's going to collapse that hole. He's going to cause leaks in that interior line. Whereas Danny Shelton that wasn't his job. His job was to get that offensive line upfield as much as possible and open gaps for those defensive ends to shoot through. And the reason I think he was a bust because Cleveland expected him to anchor the line the way Gerald McCoy and Ndamukong Suh do for their teams, and that just wasn't his game. It never was going to be, and it shouldn't have. They shouldn't have put that pressure on him in the first place. But you're exactly right in that comparison. I know Daniel Jeremiah on NFL.com compares him to Haloti Ngata. And if you look at Haloti Ngata's game, Haloti Ngata is not just a dude who's going to stand in the middle of the field and just push linemen back. He's going to break down some of that blocking scheme, and he may not always get there and get the sack, but he's going to make his teammates better. So that's a great comment you just made there.
Well, speaking of making teammates better, one thing that can help a team play better is a running game, something the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have been sorely lacking. James, I know you were all over this. You and I had some fun conversation about drafting a running back. Ren, when we did our pre-draft show, what we heard from everybody we talked to that night was running back was like the chief need, positional need that they wanted to see filled in this team. They wanted to see it filled somewhere. How was it going to get done? Turns out, second round, Ronald Jones is the guy filling it. James, Ren?
I was going to let Ren talk. We haven't heard him in a little while.
Well, if you go back and listen to that, I was really scared that, Barkley we knew was going to be gone. Geis, who knows what happened with that guy? Like, no one knew that he had sort of these off the field issues. Everyone thought he was going to be second one off. I was a big Sony Michel fan. I thought he was going to go first round. We weren't going to get him. Then if you looked at the top of the second round, there were teams that were running back needy, and it was a little scary, and then that would have taken off Chubb and Sony Michel, and now we're sitting there at 38 going, okay, I guess we're taking Rashad Penny. So did I say Sony Michel twice? I meant Jones. So when we all thought, and I was at the Bucs Uncensored draft party on day 2, we all thought it was Geis. Like I said before, we sort of had that fall to us. But as far as explosiveness and I know he didn't time well, but if you watch watch his tape like Dave does on YouTube, he outruns the angles. The safeties and corners will have angles on him, and it doesn't look like he's really moving that fast, but time after time after time after time, he outruns the angle. So I know he didn't get a lot of coverage from any of us because he's a West Coast guy. We were big on the Georgia guys. We were big on Geis. We were, SEC. We're down here. But if you take an honest assessment of it, he possibly, from all around back, coming out of college, he could, if you're going to rank him that way, without any favorites, you can make a real strong argument he was number 2 coming out.
Yeah, and something that we talked about on one of our recordings, they all run together anymore, is that Ronald Jones might actually be a better complement to Peyton Barber than Darius Geis would have been. You have kind of contrasting styles, and don't get me wrong, like, we know Peyton Barber's kind of the more of the brute strength runner, and he's going to run over you, and he's going to fall forward for those extra couple yards, which you want to see. He's not going to, collapse or fall backwards or something like that. But Ronald Jones runs with some power. Like, he's not just a speed guy. He's not just a finesse guy. He is a powerful back. And something that I watched after we had recorded Locked On Bucs today, I threw on while I was cleaning up and I started working on making the kids dinner. I started watching some USC games, and that was one of the things that I looked for. Was there were a couple times where I saw him, he got tied up 1 or 2 yards past the line of scrimmage, and sure enough, he falls. He's another one of those guys that falls forward. He's not going to continue to fight until he gets pushed backwards. He's going to take what he can get, and he's going to keep it from going from, 2nd and 8 to 2nd and 9 because he wants to fight for an extra yard or 2 and gets pushed backwards. He's going to fall forward. He's going to get you to a 3rd and manageable, or he's going to get you the first down on 3rd and 2. So I really, like Ren said, all of us in the chat, we all thought it was Darius Geis. We were all sold on Darius Geis, not knowing the issues that were going on. But trust me, Ronald Jones is far more than a consolation prize.
Yeah.
Well put.
Yeah, it's I got to be honest. I don't follow college football enough to know who all these guys are, so I tend to wait till now to start researching these guys, and I haven't looked at his tape yet. So for those of you guys who have, is Ronald Jones the kind of guy like, Peyton Barber was the guy, he's not going to break off any, 40, 50, 60-yard runs, but he's going to get you 4 every single down and not lose you any yards. Is Ronald Jones the guy who's going to take it to the house every once in a while, or is he just that workhorse type guy?
He's a big time threat, and the one thing I like about him, watching him, is he hits the hole. He doesn't hesitate. He's not using the tippy toes or dancing at the line of scrimmage before he moves. He identifies the hole and he hits the hole, and that's the one thing. Just watching him consistently is what he did. It wasn't he wasn't hesitating or waiting. As soon as he saw this is where I'm going, this is where he went. And just like was mentioned, he does fall forward. I'm looking forward to him in the red zone. He's somebody that I personally, just watching everything, if everything works out the way it should, I expect to see him in the red zone moving everything forward, because that's what kind of runner he is.
Love it. I look forward. I look forward to seeing what this offense is now going to do with a legit running game, because I was at a point, guys, and I know that this is bad football and I know this is bad coaching, but I was at a point where I was just saying, screw the run game. Let's just throw the damn ball every single time we are out there and challenge the defenses to stop us and just do that. Not really, but yeah. So I'm excited to see what this running game could do. Let's move on to our next pick. Now, this next pick that we got, this was later in the round, second round still. This is one of the picks that we picked up from the Bills in that trade earlier in the night. We took MJ Stewart. Now, I got to be honest, I put down MJ who? Because this is not a guy that I was aware of, but he's a cornerback. The big positions needs that I think most of us would agree. Running back was a big glaring hole. Cornerback a big glaring hole. Of course, we've got Brent Grimes back this year, but for this year only. Let's not fool ourselves. He's not coming back for yet another year in 2019, right? And we've got VH3. Listen, he's 2 seasons in. This is his 3rd season. Who knows what he's going to do this year? Not a lot of people have a ton of hope for him, at least outside of the organization. So we'll see what he does. But then after that, there's just not much. So actually with the next 2 picks, we take 2 cornerbacks, MJ Stewart. What do you guys know about this guy? What do we think? Let's wrap this guy. Was this guy a good pick? Dante Jackson was a name I know that was being thrown around quite a bit, but we went with this guy over him.
Pick somebody.
Yeah, I'll go. I'll take that one. Dante Jackson was my guy. Like, if I had the opportunity to meet Jason Light, and I don't know, like maybe I saved his puppy's life or something someday, and he was like, you know what, I'm gonna give you a draft pick. Who do you want? I would have said Dante Jackson. But I can't deny what Trevor Sickland says about him, and that his frame and because of his size and he doesn't have the greatest wingspan. It kind of looks like he might end up as an inside type corner. And if Vernon Hargreaves is really going to be relegated to that duty, you don't, as a Buccaneers franchise, you don't really need to draft a guy like that. I still believe that Dante Jackson can play outside, but I'm a believer, you know what I mean? So when you talk about MJ Stewart, I'm on the same page. Like, I really didn't look a whole lot into him. We didn't do a profile on him. We didn't really do a whole lot of conversation about him. He wasn't a name I really heard that much throughout the draft process either to really get me to look in his direction. But from what I do and what I have gathered from the senses, he's a very versatile guy. He's a decent pass cover guy. He's a decent tackler. So in a sense, what you can do is you can add him to the pot. And I kind of feel like we talked about this a little bit earlier, James and I, that he may not have necessarily been higher up on the draft board as far as pure rankings is concerned for the Bucs, but looking at the way what the board was following, there were some pure corners and some pure safeties falling down the board, and versatile guys like MJ Stewart really weren't falling. They were kind of getting taken early. Like, you see Minka Fitzpatrick get drafted ahead of Derwin James. Well, Minka is much more of a question mark than Derwin James is. So if you're looking for a safety, like pound the table, we need a safety, Derwin's really your guy more than Minka is in some cases, right? But that's kind of what I think the Bucs did. They took MJ Stewart and they're like, okay, this is a versatile guy that can plug a hole in various situations. So let's see how the board develops, and then we'll take other guys that are going to essentially later on lay the framework for where MJ Stewart falls in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I think that makes total sense. And, one of the things that kind of got tweeted out, I think Riley Almond was one of the guys who put this out there on the conference call with MJ right after he got drafted. He had mentioned that the Bucs had talked to him about moving to nickel or safety in one of those two places, which, if you guys remember, Coach Cutter at his breakfast said VH3 is at least going to play our nickel, which to me kind of says they're trying. Okay, so maybe they're going to draft MJ. They'll look at him at safety, but they'll also look at him at nickel. We still have JV and Elliott. Maybe they're really trying to move VH3 back to the outside. At least try it and see if it works. So it's an interesting thing. However, shortly after this pick, the Bucs had another second round pick that they'd also picked up from the Bills, but we didn't pick there. Jason Light, in working his magic, traded back yet again to pick number 63, still in the second round, but in doing so picked up a fourth rounder that he would later use to move back up into the third round and get to a guy I'm going to talk about. Very excited to talk about him in just a second. But they drafted another cornerback in Carlton Davis. Now, this was a name that I was very familiar with and was pretty excited because this guy is a true, as far as I can tell. Now, you guys may know this better than I can, so any of you guys jump in on this guy. This guy is more of that true outside corner threat, I guess you would say. Is that fair with him? Because, I was kind of happy when I saw this name come across the screen.
Well, considering he's 6'1", I think that there was a lot of on Twitter, a lot of people were complaining about the size of the cornerbacks, and just getting a guy like a Carlton Davis who's aggressive, and at 6'1", going up against players like Julio Jones and some of the other wide receivers in the NFC South. I think that's kind of what they're looking at, is you have somebody that can do that. And I'm not taking anything away from the other D-backs that we have, but I thought this was a good pick.
I like it.
Yeah. There. I thought this was a good pick. I think Carlton Davis is a guy that, just like Brent said, we were all pretty well familiar with because he's a name that has been thrown around just a tad with the draft. I do agree with David when he said I did like Dante Jackson as well. But I think the Bucs liked MJ Stewart's versatility more. But back to the Carlton Davis, this is one of my favorite picks of this draft class. And just because he's so physical, and I do believe that the Bucs are going to give him a real shot at being the number 2 corner next to Brent Grimes. And it's going to be a nice little change of pace because I get a lot of questions about why do the Bucs like small corners, this and that. All their corners are 5'10", 5'11". Well, now you got a guy at 6'1", got a guy that's going to play physical man press coverage. He's going to try to bump you at the line of scrimmage, and he's going to play physical. Now I've seen brought up a lot. Well, when the ball's in the air, he loses 50-50 balls a lot. That's going to come. You can learn that. And I think he will. I think it's going to be a very good pick. And I think the Bucs have just landed their number 2 cornerback for the long haul. I really do think that. The VH3 is a huge question mark. I do not think or know if he can ever play outside cornerback in the NFL just because he's not physical enough. I think Carlton Davis is going to be able to do that because of his physical nature.
So do you think Carlton Davis is a number 2 and not necessarily maybe a future number 1? Is that possible? Or could he potentially be our next Brent Grimes in that number 1 spot?
Well, I would take a wait and see approach with that. I think they want to try him out on the outside right next to Brent Grimes and see how it plays out. If he flashes potential, do I think he could eventually become their number 1 corner? Yeah. He's a bit of a different corner than Brent Grimes. Brent Grimes is more of like a ball hawk, but there's nothing wrong with your corners being physical. Brent Grimes is physical, but Brent Grimes tries to really bait the quarterback into throwing the ball. and then he picks it off. Carlton Davis is a guy that just, hey, he's going to run. He's going to follow that wide out. He's not going to give him much space and much room to breathe. So, I mean, do I think he could be the number one corner eventually? But I do think that the Buccaneers do like Vernon Hargreaves. I think that they want to give him another shot, but I think that Carlton Davis is going to start and likely finish the season as the number 2 corner for now.
Yeah, I mean, what you're talking about there, Evan, the Bucs certainly have a tendency to like their guy.
You muted yourself.
And oh, dang. Daggum. No, I was trying to
did it
unmute
again.
myself. There it is. All right. Sorry. No, what I was just saying was, to your point there, Evan, the Bucs have a tendency to like their guys and really want to stay with them, i.e., Doug Martin. And maybe stay with him a little bit longer than they should. But I'm with you on that.
I.e. Doug Martin.
I.e. Yeah. It's I'm with you on the idea of I'm not done with VH3 yet. I don't think he's a total lost cause. I want to see what he can do. I want to see what he can come back with. I want to see how he bounces back because I thought towards the end of his time before he got sidelined with an injury, he was doing much better. So I'd be real interested to see what happens with him. When he comes back, and we'll see. It's just if it's not going to work with him, I hope they cut that sooner than they did with Doug Martin. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I definitely agree with you when you said that before his injury, I think Vernon Hargreaves was playing probably the best football he's played in a Bucs uniform.
Yeah.
I think when you look at the Panthers game, it was week 8 in Tampa. Vernon Hargreaves was playing more physical. He's playing more man coverage, and he just seemed more confident. And hopefully that's something that carries over into 2018. And I know that's something that the Bucs are hoping that carries over to 2018. I mean, I don't think the Bucs are done with VH3 at all. But I think that if he still struggles this season, I think that you have to let him go. They have a long leash on a certain amount of guys, like you said, Doug Martin. I mean, pretty much Roberto Aguayo. I would say no,
right.
Because it was his rookie season. They gave him a season, and then they gave him one preseason game, and then he blew it.
Yeah.
They had. But I hope for VH3's sake and the Bucs' sake that he comes out and has a great season, and I hope that VH3 and Carlton Davis are the Bucs 1 and 2 corners for the next 10 years. It's a lot of uncertainty right now with Vernon Hargreaves.
Yeah, and that's really the thing. I look at these two cornerback picks. And later we take another safety, so that kind of maybe will help that out as well. But this is not just a fix for this year. It seems to me like these picks really are about the future as well, and what it is moving forward here within the next couple of years. So does anybody else got anything on either one of these two guys, MJ or Carlton Davis, before we move on? Because I'm excited to get to this next pick.
Yeah, I'll throw something out real quick on Carlton Davis. And, during the draft, Pro Football Focus was releasing a whole bunch of stuff. And, of course, I'm not a huge fan of their grades, but they do put out some pretty interesting information at times that I do find useful. And on Davis, one of the things was last year he had a career low in allowed completion percentage by opposing quarterbacks when he was targeted at 48.1%. But the thing that stuck out to me was he was either number 1 or number 2 of the draft prospect corners in contested catch percentage. And he only allowed 25% completions on those 50-50 balls that Evan mentioned last season. So that to me, when you're going up with 50-50 balls against guys like Michael Thomas and Julio Jones and those guys twice a year, that's something that really stuck out to me. That's like, if he's doing this in college against these, other SEC receivers that we're seeing come into the NFL, if he can if he can translate that to his NFL game, that's a huge win for the Bucs.
Love it. That gives me all sorts of good tinglies inside,
And we can do the Carlton gifts all the time.
Oh, I hadn't thought about that.
Oh, so many Carlton gifts all season long.
So
many.
Can just as a stadium, can we all do the?
No.
Yes.
Ren, you're going to every game with me this year as long as you do that every time.
Tom Jones in the stadium for every interception. It's not unusual. You can do that dance to any song, though. I'm convinced.
Ooh, I wonder if they've thought about that yet.
I've done a scientific study.
Can we please get Alfonso Ribeiro to come and do something with him? That'd be amazing. For those of you who don't know, Alfonso Ribeiro played Carlton on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Not what this show is about tonight. Moving on. So, guys, at that point, we really kind of thought, that the Bucs might be done for day 2. But we were all waiting. I don't know about you guys. I got to that spot and I was like, okay, I'm ready to turn my TV off, but we know Jason Light, he might do something. He likes trading back up into that 3rd round, and he really hated not having it. So we stuck with it, got almost all the way to the very end of the 3rd round, and bam, the magic happened. Came across, there was a trade. We traded one of those 4th round picks that we'd picked up earlier, or wherever we got that one from. We actually packaged that with another 6th round pick that we had, and we traded back into the 3rd round to get what was a position that I felt really needed bolstering, because I had all kinds of question marks about our offensive line. Not the left side, the right side. And we went up, we got offensive tackle from a real unknown school that you've never heard of before in your life, Alex Kappa. I remember watching this guy at the Super Bowl thinking, interesting, I like this guy. But I noticed, and the thing that really jumped out to me, he was an offensive tackle, played left tackle in college, but they announced him as a guard, like specifically as a guard. And I tweeted that out. Lots of people did that. But Gene, man, I'll go to you. Alex Kappa?
Yeah, I'm really excited about this pick as well. I don't try not to sound like a homer, but this is one of those moves that I like. You're talking about a 4-time GNAC Lineman of the Year. I think he's solid. Watching him at the Senior Bowl, I was really impressed with him as well. I think that, again, this is going to do nothing but help that offensive line for Tampa. And again, that's where we want to make sure that Jameis Winston's protected going into this season.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Kappa is going to be the starter this year, but I really do like the move. This is where you sort of see where free agency attitude guys are starting to match up with the draft attitude guys. You might even could go back to the previous cornerback pick. These guys with the chip on their shoulders. These guys at win at all costs. It's from here to the end of the draft are it's more attitude. Of course, they like their athleticism and things, but they're not first round draft choices. So I think Jason Light made put a big emphasis on finding the right type of attitude. You got burned a little last year with Chris Baker and TJ Ward. And so this is, so like I said, where free agency and the draft sort of match up as far as attitude with these players come. He was always mentioned about, he was so fun to watch on tape because he's burying guys. He carries around sand in his pocket and he throws it in your eyes, and then he cleats you, and then he rips your face mask off, and then he goes to your house and he kicks your dog, and then he says bad things to your mom, and then he comes back and it's second down. So we'll see if he sort of slides into that spot. Sweezy's a big mystery. Dotson, I think will be back. But you got Caleb Bednock and Evan Smith there. But as far as going to the future, as much as Buck fans are excited of seeing sort of this Nelson, Jensen, Marpet interior, it might just be, a year and maybe 2 years where you're going to have this Kappa, Jensen, Marpet interior.
That's going to be a lot of fun, and I hope you're wrong, Ren, but I'm afraid you're right. At least to start the season. I don't know if Kappa will start. I hope he does. I've been watching his tape almost nonstop since we picked him. Went back and watched his Senior Bowl stuff as well, and I like this guy. He's going to be fun to watch. But DeMar Dotson What was it? Was it an ankle or a knee or something that
a knee cleanup?
It was a knee. And they say he'll be back, and that's great. DeMar Dotson, obviously coming off of potentially his best year as a Buccaneer this past year. He's been around. He's the longest member of the team. He's been around since 2009, I want to say. Does that sound about right to somebody else out there? 2009, 2008, somewhere around there.
Yes.
He is at the tail end of his career. And is he going to come back and have another prolific year this year? Maybe. I don't know. Obviously, there's the whole thing with Sweezy, and he's not even cleared to play yet, so that's a question mark. Now, we've got Caleb Benenoch. We can slot him in there, but can he carry a starting role on the offensive line yet? Has he worked himself up to that? I'm just not sure. He seemed to do okay when he slid in last year, but, he didn't seem to dominate either, like we're kind of hoping. And then, obviously, we brought back Evan Smith, who – was part of that whole weird rotational thing with Kevin Pamphile last year. And the only thing, what really gets me about that is listening to Coach Cutter talk about that situation specifically, the rotation thing. He said the reason they were really rotating was because nobody took it. Nobody stepped up and took it. But now, obviously we brought him back. I think we were going to bring one of those two guys back anyway. It just depended on who was going to get signed elsewhere first. So the idea that we bring Alex Kappa in solidifies that line. That's going to help our running game a lot. That's going to help. Certainly, it's going to help protect Jameis because God forbid he gets injured again. I loved this pick. It was a good way to end day two, to end the third round. So, all right, guys. Before we move on to day three, anybody else got anything else on anybody that we've talked about so far? Once. Going twice. All right, let's move on, guys, and we'll wrap up this show. Three picks, no more trades. We just took them as they came. The Buccaneers picking 17th on day 3. In round 4, it's the 117th overall pick. We took safety Jordan Whitehead. The Parrot, unfortunately, proved to be a big disappointment, but we don't have to talk about that. Safety Jordan Whitehead. Now, I don't know anything about any of these three guys, so you guys will have to help me. Whoever wants to jump in, let's talk about the safety that will be joining possibly Justin Evans, maybe Chris Conte, not really sure.
Whitehead lays down the wood. Like he hits hard.
Your sex tape.
Whoa, now this is a family-friendly show.
Oh, he hits it hard, huh?
He hits hard.
Lazy wood.
I haven't watched too much of him. I saw a brief kind of like little highlight reel. There was a picture I put in my draft grades article at the Pewter Plank where he hit I believe it was a Navy guy, and the dude's helmet came off. Like he's out there to knock people out. So I do like that as long as it doesn't bring the flags. But other than that, I really haven't had time to go through and watch much of his actual like games or anything, but I'm excited about the potential there. I don't think he's going to unseat Conte or anything, at least not immediately, but I'm excited about the upside and the potential for sure.
Yeah, I actually agree with James. I don't think he's going to start over Conte right away, but it wouldn't surprise me at all. I mean, especially mid-season, if Jordan Whitehead would be starting over Chris Conte. He's a player who is undersized for a safety, but he doesn't play like it. He's one of those guys that just like James said, he hits hard. He's not afraid to hit. He's not afraid to make that big hit. No matter who you are, it doesn't matter how big you are, how tough you are. He really wants a piece of you, and I think that's something that is good. I mean, Justin Evans is similar. He's a hard hitter. Is Justin Evans always the most consistent tackler? No, but I mean, it's very hard to find safeties that are going to be great tacklers. But I mean, I think that this is a good compliment to Justin Evans. And I do think Jordan Whitehead at some point could get some starting time as a starting safety right next to Justin Evans. I would say by midseason, especially if Chris Conte struggles, or as in the past, Chris Conte has had some minor issues with injuries. So I could definitely see something like that.
Yeah, I look at this Jordan Whitehead pick, and it really does fit kind of the mold that when they picked Justin Evans. And and that is focusing on what they bring to the table that you can't coach versus worrying about what you can teach and what you can coach on the back half of things. And you look at Justin Evans, you look at Whitehead, and like both these gentlemen have already said, neither of them are afraid to mix it up. Neither of them are going to be afraid to get in the scrum, get dirty, put their shoulder pad on somebody whenever it's needed. But where they both kind of need development, if you remember from when Justin Evans came out last year, is in pass coverage. And if the Buccaneers can have, similar success with Whitehead, sharpening his coverage skills like they did with Evans, then they just got a big steal there late in the draft, because now you're going to have two safeties that no matter what side of the field the action's on, you got a guy who's going to go down there and they're going to get in the business. But you also got two guys who can potentially cover. And you look at what the rest of the NFC South did, right? There's a lot of wide receivers that got drafted in the NFC South over the last weekend. So having guys who can potentially come in and cover and still be physical and still, like James said, lay the wood down when they need to, is going to be really crucial to survive in the NFC South, I think, moving forward.
Well, you guys got me excited about this guy. Go ahead, Ren.
Everyone has said the word Justin Evans because it's an easy comp, and everyone knows who we're talking about. We're talking about an athletic guy that brings the name of your sex tape. He brings hats, and that's what he does. But on the flip side, he's a little raw for the safety position. I mean, obviously he's super athletic. They played him at running back at Pitt for a little bit. This is what I'm hoping. Like, I don't know a lot about this guy. This is what I'm hoping. I'm hoping the Pitt staffs treated how they treated Peppers last year. Like, you're our best athlete. We need you uncovered in the defense. We're going to put you at the safety position where we can keep you deep or we can bring you forward, and you're just going to go and make plays for us. And with that type of player at that type of program, I'm hoping that once he gets into the safety position, he can sort of become what Justin Evans has become so far. I feel safe to say that we all were pleasantly surprised by Justin Evans last year. Mm-hmm. Now he plays much better looking in the backfield. Once Justin Evans spins around and is not looking at the quarterback, he gets a little lost, and I'm hoping he'll improve on that. But like David said, if you get somebody that even maybe it takes him an extra year to get where Justin Evans did by the end of last year, maybe it takes Whitehead 2 years to do that. That's a big steal. And if you can get a guy who is going to gets 2 years as your starting safety on a rookie contract, late in the draft, I'm for it.
Let me ask you guys this, because I've seen this floating out there on Twitter a little bit. But with these 5 picks, Vita Vea, Ronald Jones, MJ Stewart, Carlton Davis, Alex Kappa. Wait a minute, that's 5 right there, right? That's 5. And then even with this guy, Jordan Whitehead, so 6. With these 6 picks, is it possible that in this draft we have drafted 6 potential starters for this team? And not just maybe not day one, but maybe by season end or beginning of next season, we've got 6 new starters on this team. Is that possible? Or probable?
Yes. Yeah. Possible, but
probably not probable.
Yeah, not highly likely, but it is possible. Of course, there is always
injuries will have to play a big part in that.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was about to say. Nailed it, Ren.
Yeah, I mean, I think if everybody stays healthy, I think what the Bucs have done is they have drafted a lot of guys who are going to come in and grind. And I know that sounds kind of corny, right? Like, why wouldn't you come to an NFL franchise ready to grind? But there's a lot of time between talking on stage and talking in conference calls when you first get drafted to when you show up to rookie camp, show up to training camp, get through the preseason, get into the season. And then when you get to week 15 and 16, when you're used to being off and probably home on vacation, eating mom's cooking, and you're still grinding, still working, sometimes it just doesn't work out. You know what I mean? The NFL is a job just like, it's a professional career, whatever, but it's just like every other career. Sometimes you're going to find guys who absolutely love it and would die every day to do it. And you're going to find guys who are just like, it pays the bills. So as long as it keeps paying the bills, I'm happy. Marcellus Wiley is a guy he's probably one of my favorite sports personalities out there on the mainstream media. And he's a guy all the time who will freely admit that towards the end of his career, especially that Dallas contract when he got, fat paid, as he likes to say, he was playing for the money. The passion for the game, he still enjoyed football, quote unquote, but the passion for the game had long left his body, and he was just out there. What is he? He says, I can't remember what his saying is, but basically he was gonna play in the league.
Villanova. That's his saying.
Oh yeah, he was gonna say I was gonna play in the league until nobody in the league would let me play, and that's what happened. Like he didn't stop playing NFL football until the NFL said, "Hey, you're gonna stop playing football."
They retired.
So yeah, so there's just guys out there like that. But what the Buccaneers have done, and like James said in our episode we recorded this morning, that we kind of covered that is. They've gotten all the guys they got in, they believe truly love the game of football. And when they say they're coming in to grind, that's not a promise, that's a prophecy.
I like it. It's not a promise, that's a prophecy. All right, guys, well, we got just a couple of minutes left, so let's go ahead and round out the show. Round 5, what was this, our 7th pick of the draft now? We take a wide receiver. Now, this one actually made me scratch my head a little bit, mostly because of the position. We really need another wide receiver. You could maybe make an argument. Justin Watson, what'd you guys feel about this? Gene, let's go over to you, man. We haven't talked to you in a few minutes.
Well, I'm going to be very honest. I'm not real familiar with Justin Watson, pin receiver,
sure.
Career 3,777 yards receiving. Again, depth. I'm not sure. I've heard a lot of good things about him, but personally, I'm not sure on this pick here.
I think Trevor Thickeman nailed it when he said he's Adam Humphries' replacement. Adam Humphries is making $3 million this year. We don't want to pay Adam Humphries $3 million next year or $4 or $5 million. And, so there's two things. There's one, he's Adam Humphries' replacement, and two, we got him before the Patriots picked him up. And that's really about it. You got a new slot receiver if he pans out on a 4-year rookie deal. And that's what Brent said earlier, looking towards the future.
Something really interesting in the chat here. Somebody said, until everyone on the roster can compete for the number 2 spot, a wide receiver is always a need.
That's fair.
Yeah, I like that.
I think everybody should be able to compete for every position. If you can go beat him, you can go beat him.
He means talent-wise.
Oh, yeah.
He means saying your number 4 wide receiver, is it when your 4 wide receiver is good enough to play 2, you don't need to draft a wide receiver.
Like Chris Godwin.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
Well, and keep in mind there's also the possibility that not only will Humphries be gone, but Deshaun Jackson as well. His guaranteed money is up this year. Are they going to pay him that big contract next year, along with Jason Pierre-Paul's big contract? There's going to be some wiggling with the financials. So why not draft a guy who, as our boy Bailey Adams pointed out on the website when he did his 3 things to know about him, his NFL comp is Vincent Jackson as far as size, speed, catch radius, that kind of thing. Like that's who he's comparable to in his measurables. So nice. Why not give him a chance? You're in the 5th round. Right. You've filled the needs. Take a flyer. And
we give him a year at least to develop, right? And see what he can do. So, okay. Well, I like it. I like that pick. I really wasn't sure outside of just a depth, maybe an upgrade over a Martino or a Bobo Wilson or something like that. But, you put it like that. I like it. All right, guys, let's move on. Last pick of the draft, round 6. Didn't even make it to round 7. Round 6, the 28th pick of that round, we take Jack. I'm not going to say his name right. Sitchi? As a linebacker. Again, a position of not incredibly great need there at the linebacker spot. But, Kendall, I guess, did go out with an ankle injury. We do expect to see him back. Linebacker core certainly was the strength of the defense last year. I don't know that any of us here would argue with that, but, I'll toss it out to you guys. What about this guy? Talk to me. Why him?
He's a baller, man. I'm real high on this guy. I know I've heard some of the other talking heads in the main media talk about him too. Listen, before he suffered the 2 catastrophic injuries that he suffered in his college career, he was like the next great Big Ten linebacker, and the Big Ten has produced some pretty decent linebackers in their day. So for him to be kind of considered to be that guy, that says something about the kind of player that he is. And honestly, coming through the injuries that he's come through and still being able to come back and still be able to keep his head on straight and still being able to keep his eye on the prize, so to speak, really says a lot about him too. And during his conference call, I guess, he was very adamant that he was coming back 100%. He was going to be ready for camp, and he was ready to attack it. And something that I wrote in the immediate announcement, post that we put on the Peter Plank was that it's important to remember when you look at a guy who has kind of that injury bug tag that both of his injuries, while they were both very serious injuries, were both to different parts of the body. And I mean completely different. It was like, it's not like he had a broken right arm and then he tore a right rotator cuff. Like one was a knee, one was a shoulder. You know what I mean? Like or a chest rather. I'm sorry. They're two very different parts of the body. So it's not like he's just walking around with weak legs or a weak chest or a weak upper body. Hopefully, right, what it is it's just really bad luck for him. And now through the growth process, Wisconsin never forced him back on the field. You know, they didn't rush his recovery. They allowed him to do what he needed to do, which Wisconsin, I mean, I've never worked, I've never played there, obviously, but what I know of Wisconsin is they're very good about taking care of their players. This is all upside. I mean, at the end of the day, like if he never steps on the field outside of the preseason or camp for the Buccaneers, the Bucs haven't really lost anything. So this is all upside because if he meets the potential, and I imagine, you know, he hasn't played real football in 2 years. Like it's going to take, like if he reaches his full potential, it's probably going to take a while. We're not going to see a Quan Alexander, you know, mid-round, you know, day 3 draft pick who comes in training camp and by the end of it he's a starter. That's not what we're going to see with Sitchy. But what we might see is a 2019 role player, 2020 potential starter, depending on what happens with guys like Quan Alexander, Levante David, Kendall Beckwith. I mean, that's a lot of talent. And if Beckwith, you know, comes back from his injury and continues his trajectory, you're not going to be able to keep all 3 of those guys. Like that's just bottom line. There's no way to pay all 3 of those guys if Beckwith and Alexander continue their upward trend. So having a guy like Sitchy, who's going to take 2 or 3 years to really come along, could be extremely valuable.
Yeah, the thought of Levante's contract coming up here in the next couple of years makes me very, very sad when you look at the reality of what that probably is going to mean. But
a trade to the Patriots?
Oh, my God.
Oh, man.
Hush. You know, but listen, the good news is we don't have to worry about that, at least for a while. While. So, all right, guys. Well, that's kind of it. That's wrapping up the draft. So I'll just kind of go down the line. Gene, Evan, David, Ren, James. I'll go down the line. Final thoughts kind of on the draft as we wrap up this show. And if your partner hasn't done it yet, go ahead and give a plug for your particular podcast here for Bucs fans so they can find you. Gene, we'll go to you first, man.
Okay. I was very excited about the draft. I think that Jason Light did a great job addressing needs. Going into the draft, there was no 3rd round pick. And what he was able to do from the 1st round to the 6th round was really good. It shows the quality of general manager he is. It remains to be seen. You know, on paper, this really looks good. And just can't wait to see what happens in camp. You know, the roster is still fluid. There's a lot of moves that can be made. There are players out there that you could potentially get that are cap casualties that you may end up with. So, again, this isn't over going into camp and then going into preseason. So just kind of have to stay tuned and see what we have day 1. So I'm really excited about it. I thought the draft was great.
Awesome. And where can people find you and your show out there on the internet there, Gene?
You can reach me on Twitter at Super Heavyweight. You follow me, I'll follow you back. And just put in Buc What Ya Heard. And I've got a lot of shows. Co-host Michael Pless, who was actually manning the chat tonight. Great job. And, you know, look forward to people checking us out.
All right. Evan, what about you, buddy? Final thoughts on this draft and tell us about your podcast a little bit there.
Yeah, well, I mean, I thought that Jason Light did a very nice job, just like Gene said. I think he addressed most of the needs that were needed to be addressed, and even added kind of a luxury pick in Vita Vea because, I mean, nobody really labeled defensive tackle as a huge need after free agency. So, I mean, to get Vita Vea, you know, that's just a bonus. I do think I'm going to go out and say that I seriously think that all of these guys that they drafted, unlike last year and in years past, I think all these guys do make the final roster.
Wow.
I think that all these guys do have potential. I think they each have a role here. When I look at it, I think Justin Watson is going to end up beating out Bobo Wilson for the 5th wide receiver job. And then I think Jack Sitchy, he might find his place maybe on special teams. Or, with Kendall Beckwith's injury, it's, Darius Taylor now there, Devontae Bond, who Bond hasn't really impressed me. So I think that spot's open. I think Sitchy, if healthy, if 100%, could definitely get the job done. You can find
and Evan, before you do that, just for clarity, because you said with Darius Taylor, I think you said is his name. This is just in case fans don't know. That is a Darius Glanton. He's just changed his last name. Is that correct? Am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
yes.
We're talking about a Darius Glanton. For anybody who doesn't know, he changed his last name. I'm not really sure what the story is behind that, but yeah. So all those linebackers with the Darius Glanton sitting back there, potentially that. All right, your show. Go ahead, Evan.
Yeah, and actually, I believe he changed it because of his father. I believe it had something to do with his dad.
Okay.
I believe that's why he changed it. But, yeah, you can find my show. It's Cannon and Fire Podcast. You can find it on iTunes. Just search up Cannon and Fire Podcast. Leave a 5-star rating if you please. Please leave a review. We appreciate it. You can find it on YouTube also. Search Cannon and Fire Podcast. Social media, you can find me at Bucs Football on Instagram. And on Twitter at @BucsFootball_. I'm happy to chat any Bucs with you. And, yeah, I just, out here in Pennsylvania, you don't get to talk a lot of Bucs with a lot of people. So I definitely like talking Bucs with you guys.
Love it. David, what's up, buddy?
Yeah, so David Harrison, obviously I love what Jason Light has done. I've been a long time supporter of Jason Light. I think he's the best general manager in the NFL, and I think he honestly just proved it. I mean, if there's a draft day type of scenario, type of draft that a real NFL GM can have, I think Jason Light pretty much just pulled it off.
They're gonna make it a movie.
They should make it a movie. I mean, it's almost actually better than what Kevin Costner did, to be quite honest with you. The only difference is the absence of pancakes. But yeah, you can find my work on the Pewter Plank. I'm one of the co-experts there. I'm also on the Locked On Bucs podcast. I'm going to let James take care of all the social media stuff there because he's a pro at it. My personal Twitter, though, is DH82_Bucs. By all means, talk to me about anything NFL related, anything football related, really. I love the Bucs, obviously, but I'm a football guy at heart. So I'll converse about pretty much anything, not politics, until you start calling me names, and then we're just done.
All right. Well, we'll mute his bald head over there. Ren?
Yeah, well, I'm not going to mention the podcast I'm on, but what do I think about the draft? I'm slightly behind David in my love for Jason Light as the GM. I think he killed it once again. I'll even go back to free agency. Like, we knew that the defensive line had to get better. He fixed it in free agency. Even the smaller signings gave him the flexibility that he needed in this draft. And then during the draft, he came out and hit every spot that we needed. Yeah, we didn't get Derwin James, but we did get a safety. Got 2 cornerbacks. Got a top 5 running back at the very least in a very, very deep running back class. I make an argument for that. And then he just went after guys that love to play football. Never say die attitude. And like Evan said, they all have a good chance of making the team. So happy with it. I was happy with it last year, so I'm still a little leery as far as how this whole thing is going to go. But I'll be there at training camp again this year every day, and letting everybody out there know what's going on. And the best way to find me is on Twitter at Rendax, REN_DAXT. I am always down to talk Buccaneers football.
All right, well, that's it, guys. Show's over. No, James, I'm just joking, buddy. Go ahead.
Hey,
final thoughts on the draft.
I'm ready for bed, bro.
Yeah, you got to be up in like an hour and a half.
Pretty much. Excuse me. Yeah, I'm going along with the consensus. I was a big fan of this draft. There were all the positions that I felt needed to be addressed were addressed. May not have been what the guy that I had originally wanted, but going back and looking, I'm happy with who we have. I'm excited to continue to watch what these guys can do. I'm excited to see them join rookie minicamp here in just a few weeks. So we'll just wait and see how it gets or how it all plays out. So another tip of the hat to Jason Light for his insane maneuvering and being able to do what he did. And overall that's about it. And since David left it up to me, of course you can You can follow along on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at ThePewterPlank, at JYarko_Bucs, and at DH82_Bucs. I have to say them all together. I'm so trained at this point that I can't separate them.
I get it. I really
I'm at the point where
understand that.
I think I can do it. I mean, the cadence is the same every single time.
Yep.
I'm like, yeah, I think I can do it too. I'm not going to try.
As far as final thoughts for me, guys, I don't know. I sum it up like this: he took one pick and turned it into 4, and drafted super well. I mean, it's going to be a good class. Now, personally, and I kind of feel like I'm a Debbie Downer when I say this, but I'm applying to this group of draftees the same rule that I'm applying to all of the free agents that we signed, and that's I'm going to withhold judgment and reserve judgment until we get to about week 6 of the season and we actually see what people are doing. But outside of that, even though that's kind of my rule this year, I'm excited for what these guys are going to bring. You guys, filled me in on some of these guys that I, carrying a big hitting the wood hard or whatever you said, James, about the safety guy.
Bringing the wood.
Yeah. It's that should be real interesting. I'm real curious to see what's going to happen. I mean, my God, we drafted three defensive backs over the course of this draft. Like, this guy Ronald Jones, we're going to see. Vita Vea. We heard that name from the guys over at Pewter Report like way back in January that could be a possibility. So, it's that one's the one that came to us. But you guys talk about Jason Light, and since we know he listens to all of our podcasts religiously, Ren and I had this as a little bit of a conversation on an earlier show. I'm not going to say that he's the greatest Bucs GM of all time yet, but as soon as he puts together, the only thing he's missing to me is that playoff team. Maybe even you could say it has to go all the way to the Super Bowl. But as soon as he hits that, I think he steals Rich McKay's title. But he's on his way. I think he's done his job, and he's done everything I think he could do at this point right now to put a winning team on the field. And this is the point where he turns it over to Coach Cutter and their staff to see what happens. So
Brent.
Yeah.
Would you say then that Jason Light is the LeBron James of Buccaneers GMs then?
Oh God. This feels like a shot at James.
This is a carryover from a previous
with a pencil.
Previous thing. I am
save the Kobe Bryant and watch him come to blows across the internet.
And with that, this show has gone off the rails. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Thank everybody for joining us. Those of you guys in the Mixler chat room, you guys are awesome. Shout out to everybody. That was a great conversation. I was kind of tracking along with that. Big conversation going over on YouTube, Gene, over at the Buc What Ya Heard channel. So thanks for opening that up, guys. This will be out on several of the different podcasting shows. So we'll see where all these guys get out. And guys, get excited. This is the turning point. This is when we all start pointing towards the season. So, for Buc What Ya Heard, for the Cannon Fire Podcast, Locked on Bucs, we are the PewterCast. You find us across all the social media platforms and all the different places you download podcasts at the PewterCast. You guys are awesome. We love getting to do this, guys, with you. And we'll close it out. You guys want to say it with me? 3, 2, 1. Go Bucs.
That was incredibly cheesy, but I played along.